All right, welcome back again today to my channel. I want to continue with Research Methods 101. And today we'll be looking at a couple of things, basically two things that I want us to discuss on research methodology. I'll be looking at some definitions. In my previous video, we started with the question, what is research? What is research? That is, what is research methodology? So today we'll be continuing with some definitions of research methodology to look at scholars, because basically everything you do in research methodology, research and writing, basically everything you do revolves around your knowledge, the knowledge of scholars out there. So you don't just base your studies on your knowledge alone. If you do that, you're not going to be successful. If you're an introvert, you can't be an introvert when you come to research methodology. You really have to interact with scholars and learn from many scholars who are out there. So we're going to define research methodology from our own perspective, and then we look at what some scholars out there have said about research methodology. And that is still under Research Methods 101. So we're going to look at that today and see what it is that we can learn from various authorities out there. So yesterday we did talk about research as a systematic approach of inquiry. You look into what has been and try to see what it is that you can develop out of it. But for you to develop anything out of what has been, you really need to be very versatile. You need to be versatile with whatever that has been. So it's a systematic approach of inquiry, a structured process of inquiry. And your plan is to discover something, to find out something new. And of course, to run those interpretations and draw your applications. Very simple, right? So today, let's ask ourselves the question, what exactly are those scholarly views about research? Here we have Clifford Woody. Clifford Woody would define research as a process of steps used to collect data, analyze information to increase our knowledge and our understanding of a topic or an issue. So he sees research in that dimension. Now, when we do research, we are actually looking at some kind of information that has been put together by some other people, trying to leverage the knowledge of others to find out something new, to develop something new. So you increase understanding based on what has been. You increase understanding. Sometimes when you do that, you only simplify what has been in vogue. You make complex matters simple so people can draw knowledge from it and live a better life, if you may. Think about going to buy something from the store 10 years ago, and 10 years after you go back to the same store, the same product you bought 10 years ago with the same design is still the same product you bought today with the same design of 10 years ago. It wouldn't make sense. So, but what we see conventionally, what we see is that every now and then the same product is being rebranded. And how does that happen? It happens through the process that we call architectural design, So it's something that has been, but you go back and try to do some new pattern of that same product. So you change the label, for instance, you change the bottle. If it's something that was in a plastic, you beautify the plastic, you make it look more beautiful. But you cannot do that without doing a market survey. So when you do a market survey, you're doing research. You see that the cars that we drive, the cars that we purchase and drive, every year they come up with a new one. So why did they do that? Because there was some market research that tried to look at what has been and see how they can rebrand it. So Clifford said research is a process of steps, And that's the same thing with Criswell. Criswell defines it as a process of steps used to collect and analyze information. So whenever you get into that process of collecting information, trying to solve a problem, remember yesterday we say you have to solve a specific problem. When you do your research and you're writing, if you know you're not going to solve any problem, there's no point even trying. There's no point trying. Every paper you write, every article you push out there, every project you design or you carry out, every dissertation you write must address a need. You must solve at least one problem. Is important. And when we have that, keep that at the back of our minds, then we do well when we go into the field of research and writing. Now, OECD's Fragile Manual defines research as an experimental development that comprises creative and systematic work undertaken in order to increase the stock of knowledge. I like that. Including knowledge of humankind, culture, and society, and to devise new applications of available knowledge. Perfect. Beautiful. I like that concept of research. The definition is research and experimental development. That's R&D that comprises or that comprise creative and systematic work. So you see that you must be creative, you must be systematic. You don't say, well, my product is creative, I don't have to be systematic. No, it has to be creative and it must be systematic. Systematic means, how are you getting this information together? How are you getting this information together? Who gave you the information? How did you find the information? What knowledge are you trying to provide? And who will be the beneficiaries? Who will make use of this information? So research is something that when you're getting into it, you ask yourself a couple of questions. And the more you deal with those questions, the more you answer those questions, new questions are popping up, meaning that you're solving problem and you're discovering more, more about the problem you're solving. The more you interview people to write your work, you're seeing areas that you need to get into. So research, like we said yesterday, is not complex, it's simple if you know what you want to do, if you have your definitions out there. Now, I have this definition from me. Research is a systematic and structured process of inquiry, aimed at discovering, interpreting, or revising facts. And it's a process of inquiry that is aimed at, revising facts, theories, and applications. It involves collection of data, analysis of data, and interpretation of data. And what is the target? To answer specific questions. To answer specific questions or solve problems, contributing to the advancement of knowledge. In how many fields? In a particular field. It has to be in a particular field. So take for instance, if you go into the field of science, or you try to deal with the medical practice or medicine, you have to focus your attention on that and do a comprehensive work. Or you go into engineering, you want to provide new ideas in engineering. You stay in there and discuss engineering and give people some information that will help them navigate around whatever it is that you are working on. So it's important to keep all these and many more definitions at the back of our minds as we try to navigate the whole concept of research. Let's look at types of research. Types of research. We have many types of research methodology or types of research, but I have 4 that I want to discuss, which I know even if you try to look, you may not find more, but there are other types that we're going to discuss under these 4. So the typical types of research that we have are survey methods, survey research, experimental, case study, ethnography. Case study, ethnography. Other types of research will fall under any of these four. But once you set out to do your research practice, it must be either under survey plan, survey kind of research, or experimental research, or you're doing a case study, or you are doing an ethnographic study. So it must be in one of these fields. It's always good. I advise students that at the beginning of your work, before you even get started, ask yourself, what exactly do you want to do? What exactly do I want to do? What kind of research? What type of research? What exactly is my passion? Figuring it out at the beginning of your work is important. So you don't have to, make the mistake of beating about the bush. So identify from the beginning, from the onset, the type of research you want to carry out. And you have to do that in consultation with your supervisor or your professor, because sometimes you may be carried away by the fantasy of the information that you have, or your cravings, your desire, or your aspirations. If those are not guided, you may end up trying to do an experimental research, but you discover that you are doing a survey. Or you're trying to do a survey research, you discover that you are doing something like ethnography. Did they do these four? Do they somehow cross over to each? Are they somehow interwoven? Yes, at some point you will see the element of survey in ethnography. You see the element of a case study in ethnography. You see the element of a case study in experimental research. For instance, if you're carrying out an experimental research, you're trying to study how to solve a health problem, or maybe there's a pandemic like we had in the past, and you're trying to get a vaccine to deal with that situation. Sometimes you have to do some case studies. You have to do some, survey. You survey a place, you survey and find out what exactly is going on. So you see that somehow they meet at some point, but it may not be. If you're doing an experimental research, your focus is not ethnographic research. The design of your work will be experimental. It has a different design. When you talk about the theoretical framework, research methodology, design, research design, and all the rest of that. If you're doing an experimental research, your every aspect of your paper, from the cover page to the back page, will have to coherent. It will agree with each other. So you can speak a different language at the beginning, at the introductory aspect of your work, and you're speaking a different language in chapter 2, or you speak a different language in chapter 3, if chapter 3 is your research methodology chapter. So most times, one of the reasons some scholars hang on with their work and they never graduated, or they never have finished their dissertation, is because there are discrepancies. And the professor is saying to you, your chapter 1 doesn't agree with chapter 2. Your chapter 3 doesn't agree with chapter 4. You say, he hates me. She hates me. No, there's a problem. You haven't paid attention to the topic that you've chosen, your statement of the problem, your research questions, and then depending on which approach, theoretical framework or conceptual framework, you've not paid attention to all those. When you pay attention to your topic, the chapter 1, the statement of the problem, your approach, whether it's qualitative or quantitative or mixed methods, if you've not paid attention to all those, and you're writing and beating about the bush, the professor will say to you, your paper is not in alignment. It's not, there's no coherence. So it's important that we pay attention to how that happens, and take advantage of good leaders, good teachers to scale through your work. All right, so let's again look at some academic types of academic research that are grouped in 3 categories. I'm going to look at them in 3 categories. One is the purpose-based research, and then there's another category, methodology, and then the last one is data. So academic research is grouped in these 3 categories. So it's either you're doing a purpose-based research, or you're doing a methodology-based research, or you're doing data-based research. Now, don't be confused about all these terminologies and their groupings. They are to help you stay focused. If you're doing a purpose-based research, there are principles that you have to follow to get that done, to get a purpose-based research done. If you don't follow those principles, you're not going to fly. So you have to follow those principles to make sure you fly in your purpose-based research. But if you're doing a methodology research, that's the approach you're taking, you also have those instruments that will help you focus on that. And if you're doing a data-based research, you also take advantage of the instruments. So each of these academic research, types of academic research, are there to guide you to stay focused, depending on what you're studying. And of course, again, your background. Now, today we're going to end by talking about the purpose-based research. Let's look at what we have there. Purpose-based research is basic, pure research. It uses that approach as well. The basic pure research seeks to expand knowledge without immediate practical applications. It seeks to expand knowledge without immediate practical applications. A very good example of that is studying DNA. Studying the DNA of someone. If you're studying the DNA, if you want to study my DNA, you may not want to do anything with it immediately. Studying the DNA of someone may not be for any immediate action. You may not want to do something immediately with it. There may not be, it may just be for knowledge sake. I want to know. You can't change my DNA because you studied my DNA. I can't change your DNA because I studied your DNA. But it can guide whoever requested a study for that study. It can guide that individual for whatever other purpose. So it may not be exactly to take action on my DNA. It may just be to pull information to know, okay, this is who he is, or this is who she is. Okay, so you move on. So, but the next approach maybe will be a little bit helpful. Applied research. This applied research aims to solve specific practical problems. A very good example of that would be developing a vaccine for a disease. You see that? So if you go for the applied research, you have identified a problem and you want to solve that problem. And it could be like developing a vaccine. It could be building another wing on the airplane. It could be building a bridge somewhere, to solve a specific problem. It could be adding another layer to a product, to make it look more attractive. So that's an applied research. Applied research. There will be a consequence at the end of the process. So if something doesn't happen at the end of the process of an applied research study, then the researcher has a lot of questions to answer. So now the next is exploratory research. Exploratory research, it investigates an area or issue where little information exists. Used to formulate more precise research problems. So exploratory research, of course, when you look at the name exploratory, you can tell what it's gonna do. You want to explore somewhere and see. I don't always like to use the word investigative, but it's similar to that. Investigative research, or it's similar to it. You're investigating something, but exploratory is better. That's a better research language for me. That's my opinion. So when you do exploratory research, you're looking at a given context. You're looking at somewhere. You're looking at a kind of environment where there is need for more information. Maybe a lot of information cannot be found there to solve problems. Little information. So you study that context to formulate more precise research problems. Hey, this is going on here. People didn't know this. This is how backward this community is, and nobody knew about it. This is how dangerous water in the bottle is, and nobody knows about it. So you do that, or you say, hey, this is how critical the river that flows through this community is. This is how devastating it has been, and nobody knew about it. So you do some kind of exploratory research. You explore the origin and the process of something, and you bring out more information on that. So it's very important. It can be used for various reasons. When you do exploratory research. Descriptive research is the next one. Descriptive research describes characteristics, behaviors, or phenomena. Often use that approach often uses surveys, case studies, and observational methods. When you do descriptive research, you're trying to look at a given situation, study the characteristics, the behaviors, and the phenomena. And often you use the survey method, case studies, or observational methods. Back in the days, I liked the observational methods. Ask me why. The reason I like the observational methods is that it would take me to the context. I like traveling. So if you give me a chance to do multiple research and writing, I would choose the descriptive research because you're going to sponsor my trip. So whenever you think about going to somewhere to study something, know that process can be, quote me right, that process can be descriptive research. It doesn't mean that exploratory research will not travel. You will, but descriptive research you must travel. You must go to that context to study that context, to know what is going on in that context. Because some of the tools that you use will be case study, and if you're doing case study, you must go to the context. Because in using case study, you have to have focus groups and all that. So how are you gonna do focus groups if you don't know the context? Yeah, I know that today we can Zoom, we can use video conferencing, but it wouldn't be the same like when you go to the place by yourself. So think about those tools. Think about using tools like observational methods. Are you going to observe the place? You have to go there. So descriptive research is very, very powerful when it comes to trying to get original information. Now the next one is exploratory casual research. Exploratory casual research seeks to explain relationships and determine causality between variables. A very good example would be impact of study habits on academic performance. Now this is casual, exploratory casual. So he will study, for instance, the performance of students in school. How do they perform? How do they perform when they take a test at the end of their studies and all the rest of that? So if you think of doing that kind of work, that kind of study could be under exploratory research, and it could be a scientific study. It could be scientific. It could be plug those numbers. You can use both approaches. You can use qualitative approach. You can use quantitative approach. You can also say, well, I want to do a little bit of quantitative approach. I want to do a little bit of qualitative approach, meaning that I want to do mixed methods. So you see that. So you can use any of those methods. Very simple. Either you use a qualitative approach, which will take you into the context and you ask a lot of questions. You do case studies, like ethnographic research. Or you say, well, I just want to plug the numbers. I send my survey, I send my questionnaires, and they answer. I don't need to know who they are. I don't need to see how their lips are moving when they are responding to my questions. I don't need to feel the context. I feel it's better, it's safer, it's time, it's better for me to do questionnaires. So you go into that if that's the plan that you want. Or you say, well, I will do some questionnaires, I will do some qualitative ethnographic approach. I want to go feed them. I want to go worship in their chapel. I want to go to the classrooms and sit down with the students. I want to go to the cafeteria and see how they do when they do things. I just want to dress like a student and walk around. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. That will help you. And then that means you're doing a mixed method. So depending on what you want to do, depending on how you want to go about it, everything about research is doable. So the last one, evaluation research. Evaluation research assesses the effectiveness of programs, policies, or interventions. Evaluative research. Most times when organizations know that researchers are going to come, they become so, it triggers some people to hear, hey, organizations will come. They become so anxious. They become so anxious if they hear researchers are coming. So because they don't know the questions they are going to ask, they don't know what those researchers are going to see. So evaluation research is good when you want to find out how a program has been running, whether it's running well, or you want to look at the policies, whether the policies are really getting results. It's one thing for policies to get results, and another thing for those results to be results that the people will want to enjoy and see and live with. So when you do evaluation research, you can use any approach. It can be quantitative, it can be qualitative, but I would recommend qualitative approach to evaluation research, because you can experiment how people are feeling or doing with a new policy without going to the people, without asking questions, without being in their midst. You have to acculturate sometimes to understand the context. So you feel like go in there and listen to them and work with them. So evaluation research is good for any kind of study. It could be a medical issue. It could be a government, a new law from the government, new policies. It could be academic program. It could be a religious program and all that. So, but at the end of it, all that matters is that there's a result and problems are solved. All right, thank you, people. This is where we're gonna draw the curtain for today. If you have questions, if there's something you want to clarify from what we covered today, put those questions in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond. All right, see you again in my next video. Bye.